So I was handed a great big sheaf of questions as I walked up the little stairs there to come on the stage, which meant that I didn't actually get to read them. And honestly, if you're doing impromptu answers to questions, really helps to have seen the questions beforehand. So what you're going to get here are seriously impromptu, which means they may not even be funny. What was your inspiration to write Coraline? That's from Emma, age 9. I wanted to write a story for my daughter Holly. And Holly is now 24 and frighteningly normal. But when she was 4, she would have spooked Wednesday Addams. She was this very small child who never smiled, just looked. And she would get home from kindergarten, and when she'd get home, she would climb up on my lap because I would be at my computer writing, and she would dictate stories to me. And in Holly's stories, little girls, often called Holly, would come home and discover that their mothers had been replaced by evil witches who would then lock them up in the cellar. And then they'd have to escape from a cellar, and there would be little ghost children with them. I was never quite sure if there was a girl called Lucy Jane, and I was never sure if she was alive or dead. I don't think Holly was quite sure either. But Lucy Jane and Holly would then set off to find Holly's real mother, who was always in America with the babies. And Holly would dictate these stories to me, and I would send them off to friends, saying, this is what Holly wrote. And they'd say, woo, scary. And I go, this is what my little girl likes. I'm a writer, I will write. Actually, I didn't initially, I went, I will go and find some really good horror for 5-year-olds. So I went down to my local bookshop and I said, what do you have in the way of really good horror? You know, really creepy gothic stuff for 5-year-olds. And they gave me a look. So I decided I would have to write some. And that really was where Coraline started. It was a story for Holly filled with the kinds of things that Holly liked. It had a cat in it because we weren't allowed cats, or I was, and I wanted a cat, so I wrote one. I don't know where the buttons for eyes came from, and I wish I did. If I had a rectangular machine capable of transporting me through time and space, just before I went off and fought evil all across the cosmos, I would go back to 1990, 1991, and I'd sort of sidle over to me and say, have you thought of the button eyes yet? And if he said, I don't know what you're talking about, I'd say, good, good, good. Just pay attention when you do. For the rest of your life, people are going to be asking you. No idea at all where the button eyes came from. That's sort of neat. Like a matched pair. The next one says, what made you think of writing the Graveyard Book? It was actually a few years even before that. It was 1986-ish. And 85, 86. And my son Mike, who is now 26, works as a software programmer at Google, and what he really likes doing recreationally is riding his bicycle. And he does things like, you know, 2-person, 2-day races through the Death Valley. So 500-mile races. But he was younger then. And he had only a little tricycle. and he liked riding his little tricycle. But we lived in this very, very tall, very, very thin, spindly house. And pretty much every room in this house was connected to another room by stairs. And 2-year-old tricycle stairs, death. Oddly enough, that isn't where the graveyard book idea comes from. Where it comes from is the fact that I then realized that I couldn't really let him ride his little tricycle around the house. So I would take him across the lane every day to a graveyard, and he would pedal his little tricycle industriously between tottering old gravestones. And I would sit in the sun and read my book. And one day I looked down at him and I just thought, you know, he looks so incredibly at home here. That it seems rather strange, but a 2-year-old boy looks so incredibly at home amongst the gravestones. And I thought I could write a book like that. I could write a book about a dead kid, a living kid who gets brought up by dead people. And I could make it like the Jungle Book. And the Jungle Book is called the Jungle Book, and this will be called the Graveyard Book. And that's about somebody who is brought up by animals in the jungle and taught the things that jungle animals know. And this will be about somebody who's brought up by dead people and taught the things that dead people know. That was it. So I ran up to my study and I wrote about a page and a half. And I looked at the page and a half that I'd written and I thought, you know, I'm not very good yet. Definitely not good enough to do justice to this idea. So I put it up. And every 8 or 9 years I'd go back and grab a sheet of paper and try and write another few pages. I'd always write the same scene over again, the baby arriving in the graveyard and the dead people arguing. And somewhere in there I thought, you know, I'll just put it off until I'm good enough. And then, round about 2004, I thought, I'm not getting any better. And it really doesn't matter if I'm good enough or not. So that was when I started it. You've written so many outstanding female characters. Is your process of writing from a woman's or girl's perspective different from writing from a man's or boy's? Is one of them more difficult to do than the other? No, I don't think so. What I do is I pretend that you're writing people, whatever you're writing. And because I figure I know how people work. And because I am one. And it really, in terms of tricks for writing, treating everybody as people works really, really well. I think I was also very lucky in that when I started out writing comics, I was definitely writing in a field in which there were very, very few women. There were things that were sort of female-shaped, if you sort of stretched things. But you definitely read some of these comics and go, this is really weird. You are a member of the human race. You must have encountered a female at some point. Either one gave birth to you, or one found you in the street or something, but you must have found it, you know. So I definitely resolved at that point that I wanted to write women who seemed like the kind of people I knew who happened to be female. I tried to do that. As an artist-creator, how has the rise of social media, such as Facebook and particularly Twitter, affected not just your interaction